Howdy, folks. Welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast. I'm Michael, and this is episode number 1. The idea behind this podcast is campfire hunting stories. We all know you don't harvest an animal every time out, but sometimes the best memories are from sitting around the campfire telling stories of your successes and failures. And I wanted to duplicate that in a podcast format. So this episode, we hear some fantastic stories from Gilbert Ornelas of the Elk Bros. I've actually never met Gilbert before asking him to be on the podcast, but I knew from his work on the Elk Bros podcast that he would be a phenomenal storyteller. And of course, Gilbert couldn't have proven that point more. Today, he tells 2 great stories that made him the Western big game hunter that he is today. I want to thank Gilbert and the Elk Bros for coming on the podcast, and hope you enjoy his stories as much as I enjoyed them. So thank you very much for tuning in. Now let's let Gilbert tell his story. All right, Gilbert, here we are, man. Thanks for joining us today on the Hunting Stories Podcast. How you doing?
Man, Mr. Scrogan, I appreciate you having us here on your show today. It's always cool to be able to come from our podcast platform to another person's podcast platform. And you know, I've said this a million times in our podcast. They pay me to talk, brother. So at the end of the day, I'm a salesman by heart. That's what I do for a living. And you know, we're working on this elk hunting deal. So every day that we get to be able to talk about Elk Bros or where we're at coming from, man, it's a great day. So I can't thank you, Mark, for enough for having me on the podcast for sure.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I figured Joe may be kind of the face of the Elk Bros, but you're absolutely the voice. So I knew I had to get you on here.
Yeah, that's a great thing because Joe's so, you know, such a positive influence when it comes to, you know, his baby. And we've said this all the time that we're all partners in this thing, but this Joe's baby, and we love him to death, and definitely he is the face of Elk Bros, him and Chav, and you know we're the support team. Joe likes for me to be out front talking and be the voice. So at the end of the day, man, I dig that as well. So yeah, awesome. I won't be lost for words much. If I am, something's really wrong.
Perfect. Well, I'm familiar with you, obviously, but yeah. I don't know if everyone that's going to be listening is. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and
sure,
kind of where
man.
you come from?
Yeah, my name's Gilbert Ornelas. I'm the host of the Elk Bros podcast, Blue Collar Elk Hunting Academy, and you know I've been with Elk Bros since inception. You know, I'm a hunter, outdoorsman, enthusiast. I've been a professional angler at times. Done everything from bass fishing, offshore fishing, all over the world. Really, I've hunted and fished. So, my resume is pretty deep when it comes to hunting things here in the U.S. You know, there are some things that are still on my bucket list that, you know, that I got to get ticked off. But I mean, here in Texas, where I grew up, I mean, we started hunting from the time we could shoot a Red Ryder BB gun, you know, at the squirrels and the rabbits and stuff like that. So, I mean, I've been going ever since I was about 5 years old with my granddad. Wow. My granddad started me off hunting and kind of started me in that lifestyle. He had bird dogs, so we hunted quail before the fire ants got real bad here in South Texas and ruined most of our quail population. I say in South Texas, in East Texas, where I grew up. And but we fished and we hunted, loved to deer hunt. So I'm a huge whitetail enthusiast. You know, we hunt it pretty much if we're not on the lake or hunting somewhere, we're on the ball field playing ball. I mean, We're always outdoors and stuff, like very rarely, or I'm working, you know. I'm an oil field executive salesman for Patriot Drilling Services. And also I work for HTK Consultants, where we put drilling engineers and well site supervisors on the rig that actually manage the projects that are out there where guys are drilling oil wells. So that's kind of my background and where I come from. My passion, though, is elk hunting and calling bull elk, right? And being in the mountains, you know, absolutely love it. One of these days, that could be hopefully what I finish the rest of my life doing. And there you go. You know, we've so getting into Elk Bros. I told you when we first started talking this morning or this afternoon that Elk Bros kind of started because Joe and I hated leaving elk camp and not being able to talk and see one another and this, that, and the other. And so he reached out to me. He said, "Hey, man," he said, "you ever heard any podcasts?" I said, "Yeah, man." I said, "I listen to Joe Rogan all the time." I said, I listen to a few other podcasts and stuff like that. And he goes, "Man, why don't we create our own podcast? And I
There you
was like,
go.
man, Joe, that sounds good. Hell, they pay me to talk. I can talk about elk hunting the rest of my life, you know. He said, well, I want it to be informational. You know, Joe's always been a blue collar guy, want to make it affordable for everybody. Everybody had this vision of his base camp where you can come and go online, take this base camp course and really dive into over 100 years of combined knowledge of all of our Elk Bros coaches and him and himself. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's killed 37 bulls in 38
Oof.
years, right? On
Yeah.
public land, right? Not on private ranchers, public land, right? And the only reason why he didn't go 38 for 38 is he didn't draw a tag, right? So, and he did kill a cow, right?
Yeah.
So he didn't kill a bull, but he did kill a cow. So, I mean, truth be known, Joe Gilia and R.C. Knox and Leroy Chavez, those guys really started me out in my elk hunting career. But we would be way remiss to say that the starting father of Elk Bros was a guy named Carl Gamage. Mr.
Okay.
Gamage owned a company called Custom Hunting Services out of Angel Fire, New Mexico. And I'm going to jump right into our story that you asked us to tell, brother. And so that story starts with me turning 40 years old, or about to turn 40 years old. And I told my wife, I said, man, on my bucket list, I want to kill a bull elk with my bow. And she said, well, you know, your 40th birthday's coming up. How much is it going to cost? Well, I told her, and she about fainted, you know. And
maybe
I had
50s.
a really,
Maybe you're 50.
yeah. She save another 10 years, right?
Yeah.
So my 40th birthday was coming around, and I actually reached out to one of my taxidermists, and I said, man, his name is Terry Bartee, a super fine gentleman. I had Bartee Taxidermy here out of Crosby, Texas, and I said, Terry, I'm looking to go elk hunting, man. And my ex-brother-in-law actually worked for him too, Matt Schneider, and they were all in the room when I was there. They were doing some whitetail work for me, and I said, I want to go elk hunting, man. And I really, you know, there's 1,000 outfitters out there, you know, that you can go look up, but I want somebody that's going to take me on the real deal. And they're like, oh, well, there ain't but one guy to go with, right? I mean, he's got a really cool place and he's really affordable and you're going to get the real deal. And I said, really? And they're like, it ain't but one guy to call. And I said, well, who's that? And they said, Carl Gamage out of Angel Fire, New Mexico. And I went, okay, well, give me his info, you know? So he gave me his info, and man, you got to know Carl, man. He's about 5'9" and stocky, and was an ex-drill sergeant in the Army pushing troops. So he's real rough around the edges. But I tell everybody that Mr. Gamage was real rough around the edges, but real soft in the middle. But it took a while to wear him down to get to that middle, right? I loved him like a brother. And I met him when I was 40 years old. So let's see, somewhere around 2013, 2010, something like that. And 2010, I believe, 2009, 2010, I meet Carl on the phone. I call him. And I said, I hear him pick up the phone. He goes, hello. And that's kind of him. He didn't say Custom Hunting Services, this is Carl. No, he said, hello. Yeah, exactly. What do you want? And I said, Mr. Gamage, I said, my name's Gilbert Ornelas. I said, and I was referred to you by Terry Bartee, the taxidermist here in Crosby, Texas. He goes, I know who the hell that is. I said, well, good. He told me that if I wanted to come elk hunting, I needed to call you, and I want to kill one with my bow. He goes, hell you say. I said, no. I said, really? I said, yeah, no, I really want to come. And he goes, yeah, a lot of people decide they want to come up here till they get here, and then they want to go home after the first day. And I was like, man, well, so he's trying to discourage me from the jump. He said, let me ask you a question. He said, are you in shape? He said, and I know round's a shape. He said, but are you in shape? I said, well, no, not really. I said, you know, I'm a pretty good sized fella. I'm about 6'1", at the time, man, I was like 325 pounds. And he said, well, we'll do our best. He said, but listen here. He said, give me your address. He said, give me your address and I'm going to send you a contract. If you don't sign that contract and send it back to me within 10 days, it's void and don't ever call me again. I said, okay, man. He did everything by fax, right? So I faxed him all my stuff, and man, he faxed me right back a contract. I signed that contract and I sent it back to him. He said, you're going to have to send me a check for half the hunt. He said, and then when you get here, you pay the other half. I said, well, that's fine. I said, I'll send you for full amount, right? No, I said half. I said, okay. So I sent him half check, and I got there, man. Brother, let me tell you, it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever elk hunted in my life. And, to this day, in the public land that we hunt, it looks a lot like that. And you can actually see into where we used to hunt, right, from the public land that Joe hunts. Well, I show up to elk camp, and there's a guy named R.C. Knox there, who we call the legend, R.C. Knox. There's Joe Gillia, and Joe hadn't come into camp. R.C. Knox, Kent Miller, and Ross Miller, and he had a cook there that is named Bob, but I'm forgetting Bob's name, but he does our intro into the Elk Bros. So if you hear him introing us, that's Bob, right? And Bob's been in the music business and all over the world. So he was there as the cook and junior guide is what Carl would say. And so I show up at Carl's house in Angel Fire, and he said, man, we got a long trip. He said, it's about 8 miles to where we got to go, but it's 2.5 hours into the ranch. I'm like, what? Well, he wasn't lying. Real rugged, tough terrain getting in there. It took us about freaking 2.5, 3 hours to get in there. But we come to this little quaint cabin, no electricity, no running, no hot water, right? Other than outside, they put a hot water heater in this little like shed where you could go and take a shower room, right? And they had a pump in the creek that ran water from the creek into the house. And they had propane lights in the house, no electricity at all, right? Wow. So outdoor privy, outdoor outhouse, So I was like, look, he didn't lie about anything. He said, listen, it ain't 5-star accommodation, but it'll be 5-star food and 5-star hunting. He said, but the accommodations are cool. If you like rustic, I got you covered. I said, okay. Man, there was no doubt. The first night I spent in that house, it was the first night that he'd hunted there. Okay. So everything was nice and fairly clean, but I had a lot of friends show up in the middle of the night while we were sleeping. Okay. And you could hear them running around that cabin, man. So it's a little unnerving, man, to know that you had little furry friends running around with you all night, Well, Joe was due to come in the next morning because he was coaching. So we started that hunt. I believe it was on a Friday, and then we were going to hunt till the next Thursday. So Joe didn't come in till Saturday morning. So Joe comes in the next morning, and he gets the guys that he's with, and I go out with Carl Gamage. And Carl is like, look, man, I'm not in the best shape either, and neither are you, by the way. He looks at me and tells me, he said, so we're going to walk out of camp, and we're going to go hunt. I said, okay, fantastic. So we get up about 4 o'clock that morning, 3:30 that morning, and man, we're hearing bulls already bugling behind the camp. I'm like, oh my God.
When in September is this?
This is the second, like September the 14th, or okay, I'm sorry, September the 10th. We show up September the 10th because my birthday was the 12th, and he made me a birthday cake and all kinds of stuff for my birthday because I was going to spend my birthday in elk camp, right? So we were there on that second hunt, man, and it was wild. They were cranking, those bulls were sounding off, and it was pretty wild. So we could hear them, bugling in the middle of the night and everything. And I'm like, man, is that guy got speakers up there and he's playing that stuff, playing them bulls bugling. So we think there's a chance, we'd heard all about these $12,000, $14,000 nature hikes and stuff like that. Guys never even see a bull, So ourselves, we get up at 4 a.m. and we walk out of camp, and it looks downhill, man, like when you're walking out of camp. But I'm going to tell you right now, I ain't never walked at 9,000 feet. There is absolutely no oxygen in those mountains. Somebody sucked it all up, and it wasn't me. But I'm going to tell you right now, I learned real quick that everywhere you went on that whole property was uphill because you couldn't get any air to facilitate your lungs. Now, look, me being 325 pounds didn't help anything, right?
Yeah.
So since then, I've lost a lot of weight, man, 50, 60 pounds. So I'm always fluctuating between about 260 to 280. And I've been as low as 245, 235, at times. But my weight is always fluctuated from the time I was 18 years old to now. It's just been that way. A lot of it was because I was an athlete where I'd play baseball and basketball and then football to put weight on. So I just fluctuate like that, right? And part of it in the wintertime, I like to eat. My wife cooks and Thanksgiving, stuff like that, so I like to eat. So getting back to my story.
I'm a big fella too. I'm with you. I'm 6'4", 240, so I'm right there with you.
Yeah, man, you sound like my brother Cole Wilkes, the Flatlander, man. He's about 6'4", 235, 240 as well. That guy is an absolute animal in the woods. But anyhow, getting back to my story, we trekked out, man. And he told me, he said, bro, first time you hear a bull elk bugle out here in the woods, he said, you're going to want to do something on this trail, and I'll turn my head and let you do it. And I'm like, y'all can figure that out. But he said, man, that's what I did. I'm like, oh, my God. So I'm like, this guy's crazy, man. But hunting with him was really cool. We ended up, I actually drew on a bull the first day, but all I could see was the top third of him. I couldn't see his kill zone, And we got back, and it was a good, man, I was absolutely worn out. Like I wanted to pass clean out coming back because we can probably go 3/4 of a mile or a mile. And I'm telling you, I was just wore out. So he knew real quick he was going to have to put me in the truck and take me places where the mule, he didn't even have a mule then. So he was going to take me in the truck. And, so we decided that evening we go hunt a water hole. We didn't see anything. We had a bear come in. It's a whole nother story in itself. But let me make a long story short. Joe and his guys were having these amazing encounters and hunts, and a couple of guys missed. One guy wounded a bull. And I'm like, man, what is up? And Joe just flat finally told me after me a couple of years hunting with him and Carl, he's like, look, dude, you got to get them LBs off and then you can come hunt with me. He said, you get to this weight, you can come hunt with me, but you cannot hold me back from doing what I need to do. So, man, that's kind of what I did. So Joe and RC called for me that last 2 days of my hunt. And Joe had to leave that afternoon. That morning, we got into a big group of bulls up in some dark timber. And he said, RC, I got to go. I'm going to leave you with these bulls. Y'all stay right here. They're bedding down up above y'all. And, and if y'all stay right here in the evening, those bulls are going to come down. And for sure, that's exactly what happened. Joe knew exactly how these bulls were going to act. RC got in there, and I witnessed one of the most awesome bull fights, bull and cow interaction that I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, wow.
We probably had 12 bulls in that set that were responding and chasing cows all over and fighting one another. And, man, I'll never forget it. RC started, he had a Carlton hypercall that he was whining on. And, man, that would just send them bulls over the edge. And he decided this bull was coming down this ridge. He said, I'm going to leave you and I'm going to walk away. He said, get you some ranges because that bull's going to walk out here on this fire break. He said, and when he does, I want you to kill him. I said, okay. We've been shooting for 2 or 4 or 5 days at the camp. And, I shoot out to 100 yards. I'm a really proficient archer. Okay. Mm-hmm. But I ain't never shot at a bull elk, brother. Okay. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you've never done it, and when you got one of them big bulls screaming in your face, everything you learn about bow hunting will run out the crack of your ass just as fast as you go. You will not remember the distance. You won't remember your pin. I mean, it's really something that's to behold. Well, I look up on the side of this big old ridge, and this bull's coming down, and he's a big sucker, man. Big 6x7, okay? And he comes running down this, just breathing fire. Here he comes, and it's amazing how they turn their heads and they never touch anything, right? But they're kicking everything. They sound like a herd of buffaloes coming by themselves, He's kicking them down trees, and he's coming down through there. And I see if he goes to the left, he's going to walk out on that fire break at 41 yards. If he comes out on the right, he's going to walk out at about 22, right? Well, he come to the right, but I kept thinking 41 because that's what I looked at down there through my rangefinder. And when he came out on the right-hand side, I said, man, 41, 41. I drew my bow. He's standing broadside on that deal. And he starts walking to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. A bull bugles down to my right and he turns broadside to walk across that road. He's 19 yards, brother. I shoot him with that 40-yard pin and I hit him just back behind the crease a little bit, more in the crease. And I hit him about that much high a center. And I got about maybe that much of penetration, about a foot and a half. Okay.
Got it.
And it knocked him clean off his feet. And he fell over on his side, got up, and took back up off the mountain. And RC heard the commotion and everything. And he couldn't even see what was going on, but he heard the commotion. He come back towards me, and he was probably about 80 yards from me. And I see him looking at me, kind of waving, and I wave him over like, come on, RC, come on. So he comes over there and he goes, well, what? I said, I smoked him, dude. He goes, really? He goes, no way. I said, yeah, man. I said, I smoked him. I said, he fell over. I said, and then when he got up to run off, he sheared my arrow off. Man, really, if we go over there and look where he was standing, he was 18, 19 yards from me, right? Knocked him clean off his feet, fell over. When he got up, he sheared that arrow off because it was in his shoulder blade.
I was wondering what stopped it from going through.
Yeah, in the top of the shoulder blade. And so we see the blood trails pretty good where it starts, right? And then he runs off going up towards the hill, and it kind of dies in that black timber. And RC's like, look, let's just sit here a minute. Let's give him some time. You don't have a lot of penetration. I don't know if you got 2 lungs or 1. If you got 1 lung, he's going to live for a long time, man. He said, so let's just sit here. Brother, we sat there maybe 2.5 to 3 minutes, and I look up and there is 2 bulls coming in like on a string at us, right at us. Giant, big 6x6s, right? 340 bulls. I mean, big ones. Yeah. Here they come, and they're coming right at each other. Boom, man, they lock up and start fighting. Other bulls start blowing up around us. Cows are screaming and calves are chirping. I mean, it's going nuts. This whole herd converges right in the middle of us, okay? Well, RC looks and he says, that's your bull. He said, that bull that's coming in on that fight, he came back down the mountain. That's your bull. He's got that hole in him. He said, but he's coming down. He said, we're going to put another arrow in him. And I'm like, oh my God, it's no way it could be my bull, because that bull would have blood and a big hole on his left side. And that's not the side that I'm looking at it, and there's nothing on him. So I draw, and he's like, yeah. He said, that's your bull. I said, RC, that is not my bull. I said, that bull would have an arrow in him and he'd have blood coming down him. That's the side I shot him on. There's nothing. He goes, oh, wait then. He goes, I mean, this bull's 15 yards from me, man. Okay. And we're talking like that. There's bulls everywhere. So the bull turns and looks at us at 15, 16 steps. He looks at us and, I mean, he's dead. All I got to do is cut it loose. And he goes, no, don't shoot him. If that ain't the bull, don't shoot him. So I let it down. Well, he runs in there to the fight with the other 2. And he knocks one of them off, and the one that got knocked off turned and came right at us. We're on our knees. He comes right at us, and he's bugling, and he's walking dead at us, okay? And RC is right behind me. And the bull gets to within maybe 3 feet, okay, 4 feet, and he's standing over us. He's like... like that, and man, he's peeing everywhere, so it's almost peeing on us, right? And he goes, and he's looking right over the top of us. He bugles huge, man, and he chuckles like that, and he looks down with his head, and we're right there, and I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? This thing at any time bulldozes, I'm looking up, and RC goes, well, do something. He goes, do something, man. He goes, please do something. So I drew back. And when I drew back, the bull just, was like, whoa. And he jumped over this big, like it was a down tree. He jumped right through that down tree. It freaked him out, And RC goes, oh my God, were you just going to let him come over here and mate us? And that's not how he said it, right? He said, are you going to let him come over there and, and do that to us? He goes, my God, man, you waited way too long. I'm like, well, dude, I was freaked out. I did not know what to do, right? And he just goes, well, you better do something right now. So, when I drew, I stood up. That freaked that bull out, and RC stood up, and man, we had a big laugh. And he said, man, sit right here. Man, that whole herd kind of boogered when we boogered them, and they went up the mountain. Well, RC heard a little weak bugle up there, and he goes, man, I think that's your bull that's already up there. And he sounded like he had a little gurgle in there. He said, man, I think you might have got one lung. So he said, let's go up there and look a little more. So we went up there and looked. Sure enough, man, we had bubbles in the blood, stuff like that. So we knew we got one lung for sure. And so we went back to camp. It was getting dark. We went back to camp and we told Carl what we had going on. And he goes, man, let's not push him. Let's let him go the night. And, we're going to get snow and we'll be able to track him really good in that snow, hopefully. So, well, it didn't snow that night. And we had some remnants of snow up on the top ridges, but it didn't really get down and snow good. So the next day we resumed tracking. And, if I knew then what I knew now, if I'd have just shot that much further to the left, 6 inches to the left, man, I go right through both them lungs, even though it was
or use that 20 pin.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. I just got enamored with where he was at, man. And
absolutely,
as a Texas whitetail hunter, we send everything through the shoulder, and that's where their vitals are. So we get really locked onto that crease. And if you have any if you're off at all, now you're forward into that shoulder, and an elk's like hitting a daggone cinder block, when you hit him in that clavicle. So anyway, we looked for him all day the next day. Got up on the ridge, saw where he'd bedded down with all them cows and everything, and he'd bleed, but not a lot, and probably a lot more internal that was going on. So, make a long story short, that hunt ended, right? And I didn't get a bull. I had a hell of an experience, and
yes, you did.
I didn't know that a big, huge part of the proceeds that Carl Gamage took in for elk hunting, he donated to the Cimarron track team in Cimarron, New Mexico, and they would always needing stuff, needing new spikes, new pole vaults, new poles, new everything, uniforms, whatever it may be. And if he gave it to the school, it would be allocated amongst all the programs. Well, his kids were in the track program, and Joe was the track coach. So what he did was he wrote a giant check every year to Joe, and he knew Joe would appropriate those funds to those kids. So Joe had plenty of money all the time to take care of his kids in the track program. So it was a really special relationship between Joe and Carl that spurred me into talking to my wife and saying, listen, I want to do this the rest of my life, as long as I live, as long as I'm capable, and as long as I'm healthy enough to go get it done. If we have the monetary means, and I can, because I know that my proceeds go to help other children, I want to keep this up and give back to them, And I told Carl, man, I can bring you more clients, He's like, I don't want no more, He's like, I'm gonna do 6 and that's it. I do 6 on the bow hunt, and I'm only gonna do like 12 on the muzzleloader hunt. That's it, right? And then he had like another 10 guys that he would rifle hunt with. But he was a unbelievable person inside once you got to know him. No doubt the guy carried a lot of demons with him from the wars that he fought, right? For our country but the guy was an incredible human being. And I just fell in love with the person, in Carl Gamage. And the guys that worked for him revered him. They loved him beyond measure, right? And Carl was the type of guy that, man, he was going to do things the right way if it hair-lipped the governor, serious business. When you showed up as a guide there at camp, you had a check waiting on your bed. And if you killed out your first day, you left. You didn't have to stay, but none of them ever did that. They all stayed to help and do whatever needed to be done for Carl because he was just that kind of guy, you know?
Wow.
So when I left there, he was upset that I didn't kill the bull, you know, and I'd passed on a couple of small bulls, but for me, it was never going to be about any bull. It was going to be about the bull. Right. And, so this bull that I got right here, that's my first bull I ever killed in my life. I've killed a lot bigger bulls in my life, but this is the first bull I ever killed in my
It's a
life.
beautiful bull.
So I say that this is really the second bull I ever killed in my life. 6 weeks later, Ross Miller is up there on the ranch guiding some guys hunting, and he found the bull that I killed. And it was in about a mile and a half away from where maybe not even that far, maybe 3/4 of a mile from where I shot that bull over another ridge. And he was down in a crease, and the snowpack had covered him, and all that was melting off. And he seen that branched antler coming out of that snowpack, and he went down there, and that was that 7x6 bull. He scored 344.
Woo.
So
that was the bull.
Yeah, that was him, man, for sure.
That's awesome.
And he had that extra point that came out of his front, and that's how I knew it was that bull. I said, "Man, has he got an X?" He said, "Oh yeah." I said, "That's him." So Ross was really cool. He said, "Man, I'm gonna have him European mounted. I'm gonna send him to you." I said, "No, you ain't." I said, "No, no, sir." I said, I didn't kill that bull. That bull died from my arrow, no doubt, but he died of other causes too. So until I can lay my hands on him, he ain't going in my house." I said, "I tell y'all what, y'all get him done and put him at the ranch and indicative of what lives there, you know." And so they were cool with that. I think Ross Miller now, since Carl had lost that ranch, I think Ross Miller now has him at his house. But anyway, that's the first bull I ever sent an arrow on. So that started my elk hunting journey, and me knowing that the proceeds that I give and the hunters that I brought customers there from our business. I brought customers there to entertain them because Carl was such a awesome person. My late great friend Tony Cosenza, we call him Big Tony. He was a awesome coon-ass man out of Boyce, Louisiana, and one of my dear friends. I got to take him elk hunting for the first time. He killed a big 5x5 with Carl, and with a muzzleloader. And I mean, I enjoyed so many good times on that ranch with Carl and his guides, R.C. Knox, Kent Miller, Ross Miller, and Joe Gillia, man. So I really got it. I really wanted to learn how to call elk and how to do this myself, right? And so Joe decided he'd take me under his wing so fast forward, shot that bull, didn't get him. 2 years later, I've wounded a bull every time I've gone. Okay. Just bad luck. Hit her limb, hit another one in the shoulder, hitting a limb. I mean, just some bad luck, right? So my third year that I hunt with Joe, we come up there and Joe's like, "We're going to get it done, man. I got an area that's full of elk and we're going to get it done." But what he didn't tell me is that the area where we had to leave out of camp from to go to would kill 90% of everybody that's got to get in there, right? Joe is not the same guy. He's not human if you really want to know. I think he's part Billy Goat and the other Clydesdale horse. I mean, the dude is freaking crazy, strong, and just got a will to go through that stuff. And I mean, it's different when you're raised up there. When you raised up here in the flatlands or below sea level and you go to 8,000-9,000 feet, you need some time to acclimate. So, man, I did all I could that year. I really got in good shape. Round is a shape, but at the end of the day, I really kept on my regiment, right? And so when I showed up, I was probably 250, 255. I was in really good, a lot better shape. And he was like, "Man, we're going to get it done." Well, every day we had to go up this place we called the Chute, man. And it's probably from about, freaking 8,500 to 10,000. And it is a freaking climb, brother. When you look up, you're looking at a man's heels. You know what I mean? You're just going up like, I don't know how many degrees that is, but it is nasty, right? And it's 1,500 feet of that. It's half a mile of that. Not 3/4 of a mile, but it's close to a half. And it is, I got to take breaks. Joe will run up it to warm his legs up. Okay. And he would do that and just really piss me off. Right. But I knew that if I got up there, we were going to get in them. And man, that day that I killed this bull right here, we got into so many bulls, Mark. We got so close, man. And to know that you've gone up that hill every day and to just get so close and not get it done. We've had the wind booger us. We've had another bull booger us. We were between two bulls and a herd of cows, and they were coming. The cows passed us. We're 20 yards off the trail. The bulls are coming with the cows. Brrr, another bull a quarter mile or half a mile away starts bugling. Another bull opens up over there with them. Those bulls throw their heads up and they head towards those other bulls, man. We ended up calling them the Hoto bulls of New Mexico, man. So, I mean, that's kind of the gay bulls of New Mexico. We're like, dude, you're leaving the ladies to go up there? Man, what is up with that? Now, knowing what I know about elk calling, I knew what was going on. None of these cows down here were in heat. They had nothing going on. They knew where they were at, but they heard that party going on up there with a bunch of glunking and chuckling and all that. They knew there was a rut going on up there, and now's the time to go up there and try to carve them out a piece. No pun intended. But at the end of the day, that's what they wanted to do. So, man, we got on their heels and started, and we ended up calling some satellites in off of them and everything. We got in this area where we had this giant 6x6 coming in. And I mean, he's coming on a string, and we get him to within about 35 yards, and he stops, and he's frontal. And there's a bunch of trash, looks like this, up there. And I can't really make that shot. And Joe's in front of me. If the bull goes left, he walks by us at 15 yards, and he has to walk around one of these giant pondos that when he walks through that, I'm going to draw, and he's going to come out on the other side, and I'm going to ventilate him, man. So this bull stops right there. Instead of going left or instead of going right on that trail, he turns left. Well, the wind is going from our left to our right. So when he goes to the left, he gets right into that wind. And, man, he's walking, and I got to let him go almost 30 yards to the right before I'll get a 30-yard shot at him. Well, man, that wind swirls in there. He picks it up, and he kind of, he flinches first, like, oh, man, I caught a whiff of something. And then he kind of looked right through us, not right at us, but kind of looked right through us and took off, man. Boom, down the hill he goes, and he comes up the other side on that chute that we walked up. And he starts bugling and all that. Man, I said many cuss words to that bull because if he goes one way or the other, we got him, right? Well, we hear this bull above him, so we decide we're going to go to that other bull. Well, sure enough, man, we go to that other bull, and we see him, but he's on the other side of a barrier that we can't cross, okay? And I'm like, doggone it. And this bull right here, he's got a bunch of cows with him and stuff like that. So Joe says, look, man, it's right at 11 o'clock. We call for a taxi, go get us some lunch, and then we'll get back up here around 3:30, 4 o'clock. He's going to bed down right up here by the water. And he's going to bed down with them cows, and we'll get right on him in the morning or in the afternoon. I said, I'm down, brother. Let's do it. So we called for a taxi, and those guys came, picked us up. We went back down to camp, which is probably a good 4 miles away from where we were.
Gotcha.
And it's downhill, but brother, I'm telling you, when you're in the mountains, everything's uphill because going downhill is just as tough as going uphill, right?
So just a little bit more, right?
Yeah, nothing there is flat. It's not like walking on the concrete. It's all volcanic rock. So you take an ass whipping with your feet and your legs. So we get back, and Joe, we eat some lunch, take a little nap, get up, and we head back up there. They drop us off. We walk that freaking chute again, man. So we up that chute we go, man. I'm pouring sweat, man. I'm sweating like a daggum hoe on nickel night. And man, we get there, and he's starting to bugle already with his cows over there, just bed bugling, right? Mm-hmm. So we decide we're going to set up a decoy up on the hill above the water where he can see this pretty little cow decoy. And we're going to sit from this location in like a blind area that we made, a little ground blind, and we're going to start calling, putting on our own scenario, right? Our own show. And if he pops out there, he's gonna see that cow up on the hill, and he'll come over that barrier and come to us. Right? That's the idea. So man, he's working to the left of us though, and he's pushing those cows to the left. So Joe goes, "Let's go." So we get out of that blind and we take off up this big hill and up this big like clear cut, and we go up the side of this clear cut, and we're on the other side of that barrier, and I keep hearing that bull open up. Joe doesn't hear very well, so I keep hearing him. I tell him where he's at. He goes, "Wow, man." He goes, he starts putting on this show. Well, the bull gets incensed and he starts coming to us. And Joe finally hears him. He goes, "Come on, let's go. We got to go back to where we were." He's taking those cows and they're coming to water. And the water was right down there by us. He said, "They're coming. I can tell." He said, we had to sprint. I got an arrow knocked up. Okay. And I got, all that razor sticking out, and we're sprinting over these deadfalls. We probably sprint a couple 100 yards. Okay. Mm-hmm. And man, I'm telling you, I'm about to die. Okay. We dive into that dadgum little ground blind area, and I look up, and at the barrier is the cows and the bull. Okay.
I got to ask, so the barrier, is that like private, public? Is that a river?
It is private. It's private okay. Ranch. Okay.
Got it.
And, he comes over the barrier. All right. He sees that dadgum decoy up on the side of the hill in that little meadow. He comes over the barrier, and Joe's using like a lost cow call. Man, he's bugling and chuckling, and he comes walking up, man. Joe's like, he gigs me with his elbow, and he goes, "Are you ready?" I said, "Yeah, I'm ready." He goes, "It's coming. It's going to happen right now, bro." He says, when I cow call and stop that bull, you draw." He said, "And I'll bugle to cover your draw." He said, "And I'll tell you exactly what the yardage is." Well, I'm like, well, he's coming towards that daggum decoy, man. Just let him walk right in here in our lap. Well, he stops the bull, bugles or cow calls at him at 48 yards. Okay. He stops him, and I think the bull would have walked within 20, but the wind was kind of jinky. So we got into a good little clearing area right there, and he goes, "Yeah," and the bull stops, and he's quartering to us just a little bit. And I come to full draw, and he didn't even see me draw. So we're sitting there looking the whole time. And I center my pin up front, just a little bit of that knuckle of that shoulder. Poof, I cut it loose. Man, I can still see the mystical flight of that arrow, man. The fletching turning the whole way. Dude, it center punches him. And it comes out, and it sticks in his left hindquarter, okay? And it's sticking out of his left hindquarter. When he kicked to take off, he shoved that arrow all the way back out. So the way it came, right? Well, it stuck him in that hindquarter, in that artery in that hindquarter, okay? And it came out, it got one lung, all the liver, spleen, all of that good stuff down through there, man. Might have clipped the back half of the second lung, right? But when it went in there, it turned and came out into that femur on the low side of his back left leg. Well, man, he almost fell over, right? And he got himself righted up, and he took off running out towards the pond. Well, when he got out there towards the pond, he's standing in water now, okay? And he's 91 yards. And Joe's like, "Man, we've been shooting at 100 yards. Can you hit him out there?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, he's got his butt to us. Let me call to him, see if he'll turn broadside." Man, Joe just went like that, and the bull turns broadside. I draw, poof, man, I sent another one. And it hits him just back of the knuckle, okay, and low through the brisket. So when it comes, it's falling down like that. So when it hits him, it goes through the bottom of the brisket, and on the other side leg, he had it kind of back a little bit. It hits him right in that knuckle right here, okay? And it breaks that leg from that knuckle all the way to his hoof. Shaboom, down goes Frazier, brother. He's in the water, right? And I mean, he's kicking around the whole 9 yards, and he finally gets himself back up, and the water's red with blood. And Joe's like, dead bull, and he's dog piled me, and he's all over me. That bull's going down right there. We're gonna get to put our hands on him. I mean, we're all a mess. Okay, I'm a mess. Joe's a mess, and I mean, the bull gets up and starts limping away. man.
So
Joe's
they
like,
are
dude,
tough.
oh my God, they're so tough, brother. He limps all the way back about 100 yards to that, maybe 70 yards to the barrier, and he falls over the barrier. He doesn't jump,
Oh
he
no.
falls over the barrier. Okay. Lands on the fence, falls over the barrier, and now he's on private land. Okay. Joe said, bro, we can't shoot at him over there. We got to. He goes, listen, that's a dead bull. We're going to go back to camp. I'm going to call the landowner and we'll go in there in the morning and put our hands on him. And I'm like, no way this is happening to me, man. No way this is happening. I smoked him, dude. Joe's like, man, it wasn't good enough to put him down right there, you know. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so horrible. I've been through this 2, 3 other times. I hate this night before, the whole night is just, you just
No
shot,
sleep.
man. No sleep. Carl Gamage was really cool about it. He loved to drink whiskey, and I'll partake in a few of them myself. So we stayed up half the night solving all the problems of the world, and he just knew that it was going to be a good thing. And so did Joe. Joe slept like a baby. He knew what was the deal was, right? So we get in there. The deal is you got to get a hold of the landowner. We're in no man's land, brother. Okay. There is no way other than a bag phone Carl's got in his truck, and sometimes it works. Well, they got a hold to the landowner. And the landowner was a fine fellow, man. Still talk to him to this day. We communicate on social media, stuff like that. I mean, great guy. And the landowner the landowner told Joe and Carl, he said, listen, did that hand, he said, first of all, I want to ask y'all a question. Did y'all call him off of me? And Joe said, 100%. Yes, sir. We called him off of you. He said, well, if you're honest with me, I'm going to be a whole lot more honest with you. He said, did the bull jump the fence or did y'all shoot him on my side? He said, no, bull jumped the fence and came over onto our public land. Or at that time, that's public there. We didn't know that, but that is public land that is also on the ranch, the private ranch that we were on.
Gotcha.
So
okay.
Anyway, we didn't know that then, but we do now. And anyway, so he says, well, listen, if you can show me a blood trail on your side of the fence where y'all shot him, I said, the arrow's still laying there. I said, the arrow's still laying there. I said, we didn't remove anything. Blood trail's there. You can see where he fell over the fence, whole 9 yards. He said, oh, I'll tell you what. He said, I'll meet you at the iron gate. I'll meet you at the gate at 7:00. He said, and I'll have my wife and my dog with me in my AT or UTV, and I'll meet y'all right there at the gate. So, man, we got up the next morning about 5 and ate breakfast, and everybody in camp went with me on that deal, man, to go search for my bull. Everybody forfeited a day of hunting that morning to go up there and put their hands on this bull. And listen, these are some really close friends of mine in my life. I mean, I had we call him Wire, Chicken Wire, but I had one of my close friends, Bruce Gaynor, with me. We had Scott Deaton with us. We had Gene Shockey with us. I mean, it was crazy the amount of people that we had there. And this has been such a labor of love between Joe and the crew, the real Elk Bros crew that started up custom hunting services with Carl Gamage and his guides. R.C. Knox was there. I mean, it was so cool, right? So we get up there and Cade's sitting there waiting on us. And he says, take me down there and show me where. So he come on our side and he said, take me down there and show him, man. Showed him the arrow, showed him. And he goes, oh, man. He goes, yeah. He said, gotcha. He said, yeah, let's get in there and go. So Joe's like, Ross Miller was with us. Kent Miller was with us. We got in there, set the little dog down. He had a little Jack Russell, man, which I'm going to tell you something, guys. If you do enough bow hunting like we do in South Texas, a dog is the most important thing you can have to find in bow shot game, because it's hard, man. A lot of times you don't get a real good blood trail, but you can't fool a dog's nose. And if that animal's alive, that dog's going to get on him. And you got a GPS tracker collar on that dog. I mean, there's some buddies of mine that run businesses down here, but he put that little dog down, and Ross Miller went like, I don't know, Ross Miller's part bird dog himself, really good guide and really part bird dog. We went maybe 55 yards inside of that wood line, and brother, that bull was still warm.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I mean, he was not rigor mortis up or anything. He was still warm. He'd laid down there all night and was sick, I'm sure. And I'm pretty sure that's probably how he kept the coyotes off of him, because he could still get up and move around, stuff like that. And maybe the herd didn't leave. Maybe they stayed right there around him. But the good Lord shined down on us that morning, and I got to put my hands on that bull right
That's
there.
a beautiful
He's a,
bull.
he's a big 6x5, and had a whole bunch of cows with him. Yeah, my first bull is, you know, that I got to put my hands on. It was much jubilation, man. I cried like a baby, you know.
I
And
bet.
if you've watched any of Joe's stuff on YouTube that he's done, or videos, you'll see me. I'm emotional. I'm an emotional wreck on every one of them I've killed, right?
There's
And
nothing wrong with that, man. It's funny. I've done a couple of these recordings now, and
yeah,
a common reaction is tears, man.
oh my God.
It's a big deal what we're doing.
Absolutely. There's so much therapy in that in so many different ways. For me, I grew up in a real broken home. I've got an amazing stepfather, but I had a real horrible relationship with my real father, and it's gotten better because of the therapy that I've done in the woods, learning how to like myself and how to forgive myself and how to forgive others. Was a big deal. I don't know if you heard one of my podcasts with Guy Duplanche. We talked. I,
Absolutely.
I
Yep.
gave a little story about one of the things that really helped me through some of the struggles was R.C. Knox and Joe Gilia actually told me I needed to read a book, and that would help me a lot. And what was crazy is everybody in our elk camp has gone through some trauma in their family lives, right?
Yeah.
Everybody, like a kinship, and they said, you got to read this book, man. This book will change your life. I said, well, what is it? Well, we ain't going to tell you till you leave. So they actually gave me a copy of it. And
Okay.
it's called The Shack. And I read that book, man. And I'm going to tell you, the first two chapters, I was ready to choke both of them. I can't believe anybody would want me to read something like that. It was disturbing, and I wanted to choke the life out of both of them for making me read it. But as I pressed on, they told me it was going to be like that too. They told me it was going to be, as I pressed on, I found so much healing in it. And for me, it was all about forgiveness. Now, everybody reads it gets something different out of it.
Yeah.
It's called The Shack.
Who's
And
the author?
I want to say his last name is Young, but I'm not 100% sure. But the book is called The Shack, SHACK, right?
Got it.
So you'll find it on Barnes and Noble or Amazon or anything like that. But look, that if you struggle with relationships, past relationships, your family unit, that book will help save your life, man. Because I was in a pretty dark place, man. And a lot
Yeah.
of that, what I didn't really understand is that depression and that walk that you have, it goes hand in hand with your weight gain, the whole 9 yards, right? So when I left elk camp the first day of that first time I met Carl, I read that book. So we started up such a kinship, uh, that, like I said, when it was such a labor of love, me killing this bull, Carl was elated, man. And look, if you guys have archery elk hunted before, it's hard. There's
Yeah.
nothing easy about archery elk hunting, man. I tell everybody that. Look, I deer hunt, 3 months out of the year here, and I mean, we get after them. It's pretty easy, you know. It is super difficult. It gets easier after you kill your first one, right? It
I
gets
hope
easier.
so. I'm 0 for 3 on archery elk right now, but I'll get there.
It is extremely difficult. I want you to understand that. There's nothing easy about what you're doing. We hunted in Colorado last year, and I'm sure most of the places you hunt's in Colorado. And
Yes,
everybody
sir.
in the world loves to hunt Colorado. And there's a reason for that. Great population of elk, unbelievable scenery, the most beautiful country, really big country that I've
Yes,
ever
sir.
seen in my life, But again, what you're doing is extremely difficult. Even with the skill set that we have, it is a grind, brother. That's why we call every day guys on our show as grinders. So, I mean, as we progressed as elk hunters, I got to calling on my own, working with guys like Luis and Manano, bringing a few guys into elk camp that Joe would guide, but it got to be a family affair. Well, I forget what year it was, but Carl Gamage lost that ranch. And then Carl Gamage passed away on us in Papua New Guinea on a welding job. And
Huh.
one of my great mentors, great friends in my life was gone. So, man, that really sent us all in a tailspin. Well, Ross Miller decided that he wanted to start a outfitting company, and I helped Ross get that going, right? Cactus Creek Outfitters. And Ross pretty much took over Carl's clientele. And Ross has a great business down there between Capitan and Ruidoso, and does a great job down there now today. We love Ross to death. And at the end of the day, Ross said, "Look, Gilbert, we got to keep this hunt alive," you know. So he had the first hunt, and then Joe and I, after Ross went off and started his own outfitting company, Joe and I kind of picked it up and wanted to stay doing do-it-yourself elk hunts in public land, right around where we hunted. So um, it was uh, it was crazy. Um, it was crazy the amount of outpour that I had from all the guys, from RC Knox, from Joe, from Chab. I got to meet Chab, and Chab became my hunting partner for many years right after that. So Joe and I believe this will be the 13th season that we've hunted together. Or 14th season that we've hunted together. I got a mini streak going. You know, I've killed like 10 bulls out of 9 years, or nine bulls out of 10 years. So
There you go.
it's been really good. He's taught me a tremendous amount about how to call, man. But what I get from being with those guys is I become a better dad. I become a better uh, employee. I become a better person because of that elk therapy, man. And we look forward so much to, you know, we look forward to so much being in the woods for that straight week uh, that I'm trying to figure out for the life of me how to spend 2 months of that in the woods and be a business. You know what I mean? Where I can
Yeah,
sustain
absolutely.
myself and my family because we love it. We love the mountains.
Yeah, there's
My
nothing like it.
son, my son and daughter both killed bulls since. Lacey killed her first bull when she was 13 or 14, and so did Logan. So, I mean, that's what we do, man. We hunt, we fish, and we play ball.
Yeah.
And but those guys have been so instrumental in my life. Killing that first bull kind of started everything off, and then from there on, man, it got easier. You know, I killed a couple of
Yeah.
cow, and look, for me, if I ever kill another big rack bull in my life, it'll just be icing on the cake because I don't care. I like to eat elk meat. Okay. So when I draw a tag, if I draw either sex tag, if a cow gets in the way, shame on her. She's getting it, right? Because I
Yeah.
love to eat elk meat. So I'm not the bull only kind of guy. I mean, Joe's different. He's going to kill something that's got some horns on it, right? But not me. If a cow gets in my way, she's in certain. Now, listen, if there's cows and bulls together, now I might defer to try and get the bull to do what I want him to do. And I've
A
been
little
so
bit more meat
lucky.
on those bulls, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I've been so lucky for that to happen. Now, the biggest bull I ever killed, my 340, 45-inch bull, almost 350. Um, he was 71 yards when I shot him. He went about 35 feet, but there were probably 35 cows that I let go in between me and him because I could see him coming, right? And I drew on, I was going to kill a cow at 12 yards. I drew on her, was getting ready to kill her, looked up, and here he comes, screaming fire, man. And man, all of them cows were, snapping to attention, and he stopped 71 yards broadside on a little uphill shot. And I
Yeah.
had to shoot over one limb and let it drop in on the other side. And man, I took my 60-yard pin, held it on the top of his back, and sent it. And man, it center punched him a little bit high, but not much, maybe 3 inches high and about 8 inches back. And dude, it was que sera sera. I watched his horns fall over. And I mean, I can remember so many bulls killing them with Joe. Joe's called in just about, and we've called in so many bulls together because we both call now. And it's I get a bigger kick calling bulls in for other people than I do myself.
Yeah.
So Elk Bros started with a guy named Carl Gamage. Today, Joe and I carry the torch, and Joe, myself, Chav, Leroy Chavis, the ninja, RC Knox, the legend, and then here comes the Venezuelan mafia, Luis Gonzalez and Manano Graterón. These guys show up at elk camp a few years ago, and they have become a staple. I coined, people want to say, man, who's the leader of the Venezuelan mafia? There's no doubt Luis is probably the leader of the Venezuelan mafia, right? But I coined that, and that's my trademark name for them. So they can't do nothing without me saying so, right? Otherwise, the mafia would not be around. So anyway, they'll get a kick out of hearing that. But look, man, those guys are the guys we ride the river with day in and day out. Some of the most subservient men that you'll ever meet in your life. And what's crazy, brother, is they all come from backgrounds like us that have something broke in them, and they crave that affirmation and that accomplishment of being around other guys that have risen above that and have made positive changes in their life. You got a choice to make
story,
in life.
Gilbert. Yeah.
Do what, brother?
I said that's a beautiful story. I love how you guys are all connected in that way.
Man, love my guys. We elk bros till we die. These are my ride or die fellas. And I thought there'd be I got 1,000 freaking stories that I could tell you, man. But
well, we'll have you back for all of them.
Yeah, man, anytime. The number one was how I got started with hunting with Carl Gamage and who really started Elk Bros. Yeah. And then, of course, my first bull I ever killed in my life. So
those are two big ones.
It's the biggest. Made the biggest impact on my. And look, every bull I kill is a great story and has made a huge impact on my life. And it's a grind because, listen, brother, I struggle. I have asthma, allergy-induced asthma. So just being in the mountains half the time, there's something up there that I don't breathe really well anyway. So I have to rely on my archery skills, my woodsmanship, and being opportunistic. If I get a shot, they're in serious trouble, Yeah. And, we shoot out long distances, so that doesn't really make a difference to me. Last year I had to shoot a bull at 53 yards because R.C. Knox wasn't going to take the shot, Probably was the right guy to take it because he was in the front, But he's like, man, it's too far. Ain't no way. He said, kill him. Yeah. He said, kill him, Big O. I drew back and I said, man, anybody got I had him at 50, and I said, anybody got a distance? Brendan Houlihan said, 53. I sent it, man. We center punched him, watched him go feet up, Yeah. So, I mean, the guys that we're together with, we hunt for each other, and the guy that's up, if he's got the shot, we're going to let him take it, and then everybody's hunting for that guy, So it's just kind of fun how we have our elk camp. I've had some guys in camp with us before that really didn't understand the dynamic. So it's super important for us to lay out the dynamic of how everything works when you come to camp with us. Because these guys are, we will all forfeit a day of hunting to go help somebody pack a bull out or go help somebody do what they need to do, and we're just like that. I mean, even Cole Wilkes, Rob Canales that hunted with us this year. Rob Canales, the CEO. We call him the CEO. Rob's the CEO of Roca International, man, Roca Sunglasses and Roca Sports. I mean, this cat is, man, just an unbelievable smart young man. And he was in camp with us last year. That guy had a broke foot and was helping me cart my dadgum elk off the mountain. It was a stress fracture in his foot, and he didn't even really know it. He just knew it hurt a lot. I mean, Joe and Manano and Luis left their hunt and traveled almost 2.5 miles down a mountain to come help me pack my bull out, right? These guys are they're great men. I can't say enough about them. Mr. Scrogan, I thank you guys for giving us an opportunity to talk about our platform. And I empower you, brother. I think this is really cool what you're doing, having guys on to tell their story, to tell a hunting story. I mean, because it's like being around a campfire, man. If you can figure out a way to turn the campfire on in front of here and listen to that crackling going on, it's really something that we love to do because that's what we do at elk camp. We sit around the campfire and tell stories,
That's awesome. So, that's exactly the vibe we're looking for. So I thank you, Gilbert. This has been fun. I knew that I needed to invite you as soon as I had this idea because I knew you would tell a good story, and I think you told two. I think you told two great stories today.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you? The Elk Bros, all you guys are dabbling in, so I can make sure to get that in there.
For sure. Guys, if you want to know more about Elk Bros, you can go to elkbros.com. And if you have any questions or want your questions aired on our show, you can go to INFO. That's INFO at elkbros.com. You can reach out to me or Joe or any of the guys at their first name at elkbros.com. Mine is Gilbert at elkbros.com. And you can find us there. And every other week we're kicking out podcasts, so we try to have one once a week. Comes out on Wednesdays, so you can check out our podcast. You can check it out at elkbros.com or go to Blue Collar Elk Hunting on Spotify or Apple Podcast, and check it out. And also, we do have our YouTube channel up and running, so you can go check it out there too and see all of our reactions. And
yep, absolutely. And I'll put links to all this stuff in the show notes so people can just go down there and click on that. So, Gilbert, again, man, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. I could visualize some of those stories, including when people were telling you if they were going to mate with you, yelling if the elk's going to mate with you.
Man, I'm telling you, it's been some wild stuff going on, man.
I bet.
But look, we'll help you close out your show here, Mike. We'll help you close out your show like we do down here in Texas. Husbands, kiss your wives. Wives, kiss your husbands. Hug your babies. Keep your broad head sharp and your powder dry. And we'll see you next week right here on Mike's show.
All right, guys, that's it. Our first story in the books. If you have any feedback, please let us know. Just go to @huntingstories_official on Instagram and DM us. And don't forget to follow while you're there. We're going to play around with the format here until we get one that the listeners like, so it's really important that you let us know how we're doing. Now, I again want to thank Gilbert for taking the time to share stories with us. It's difficult to talk about the misses we can have in hunting, but Gilbert does a great job telling his story and how they've shaped him and his group of amazing friends. I can't encourage you enough to follow the Elk Bros. I've added all the info Gilbert mentioned to the show notes, so you can find everything there, including the book The Shack that he brought up. But for now, go to Instagram and follow @the Elk Bros, and go to their website and check out the Base Camp Academy. If you're new to Western big game hunting, this is absolutely where you should start to sharpen your learning curve. And after you've checked out the Elk Bros, head to your preferred podcast app, Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, whatever it is, and subscribe, review, comment to help grow this podcast, and while you're at it, the Elk Bros podcast. So thanks again for tuning in. Enjoy the next 4 episodes as well, as they've all just dropped, and we'll be releasing a new episode about every Wednesday as long as I can keep up and we have people willing to tell their stories. So thank you again. Now go make some stories of your own.